This is the
Awesome.
Money Button interview series. I'm here with Jeff of PeerGame. And I just wanted to talk with Jeff about, so Jeff is the creator of PeerGame and he'll explain a bit of background, but PeerGame is a very popular app for Bitcoin SV and it uses Money Button. And so Jeff has a bunch of sort of lessons for people about how to create businesses on Bitcoin SV. So Jeff, do you want to like maybe explain a bit of background about what is PeerGame and anything about yourself that you want to share?
Yeah. PeerGame is a BSV based gaming app. We're starting with games a little bit like gambling and betting, but we're moving toward the games that are more like traditional games with sort of a peer-to-peer nature into it. We started this idea because obviously all of our members like Bitcoin and they're into this blockchain and cryptocurrency world, but we had to build an application that actually that is better than the traditional way of doing things, right? So we didn't really think about sort of like a philosophical, ideological way of looking into crypto, because that's what I see. All these crypto projects, they're based on the assumption that something has to be decentralized for the sake of decentralization and so on. So we tried some of the games, for example Satoshi Dice, and it was amazing because it entirely changes the way that you play games, but it seems like Satoshi Dice was not innovating. It's not moving forward. So we figured that, okay, if we're going to build games, then we're going to build a similar way of Satoshi Dice back in 2012 or 13, but on BSV, because it makes sense.
Yeah. So let me explain a bit of background for the audience who aren't familiar. So Satoshi Dice was one of the original gaming applications on Bitcoin. And the basic idea was, I think it was originally very, very simple. And correct me if I'm wrong about this, but it was really simple. It was something like you just send money to an address and you may or may not get money back. I think that was the original version. And I don't know what it's now owned by someone different, but that was the original one. So what was it and what is it today?
Well, I used to use Bitcoin, like BTC Bitcoin, and it worked fine. But so the idea is that when you send a transaction, there's no sign up, there's no login, there's nothing. You don't need to put your identification or anything like that. When you send a transaction to bet, then if you win, then the system will pay you back to your input address. So meaning that you receive the prize directly back to your wallet, and then this eliminates entire funnels of the traditional internet, where you sign up, you put your own data, you deposit, you play, you request for withdrawals, and then they withdraw, and then you get the money back. So that creates a huge barriers for players to play, because it's such a hassle. And then eventually what you end up with is you have probably 2% of your visitors actually playing. So this is one of the reasons why gaming industry spends so much money on customer acquisition. As far as I know, the customer acquisition cost is like $150 per person. If we're talking about like a big giant gaming companies, right?
Yeah.
And using Bitcoin is just so much better, because you have this micropayment system built in, pseudonymous identity that you have with your wallet. You can just directly pay and directly get paid. So it's not only specific to gaming. There are a whole lot of applications that you can leverage that.
Yeah. So if I could just interject my sort of view of what you're saying. I mean, you mentioned how some people that are involved in the cryptocurrency world are in it for ideological reasons. But what you're saying is basically Bitcoin, and when I say Bitcoin in this context, I'm talking primarily Bitcoin SV, and I don't know if we want to go into details on this, but we're talking Bitcoin SV, has actually intrinsically better user experience for people, because they sort of, once you're already in, if you have a wallet, you can just start sending money to people anywhere for any reason. So there's no barrier to entry for using a new application. So the user experience is just dramatically better than having to go through some complicated onboarding flow into a new gaming application or any other application and having to get money into it somehow. Am I hearing what you're saying correctly?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's sort of like, you know, what I figured out in the internet industry is that they build things sort of they build things in tradition, if you know what I mean. So when the companies start building web services or app services, they do things without really thinking about why they do it. They build things according to what we have been doing. So we see that in blockchain and even BSV applications as well. You know, you don't need to add your own identity. You don't need to add sign up. You don't need to. It's one of the things that people build first, like without really thinking about why they need it.
Yeah.
So that completely eliminates all these hassles that you have in the traditional internet.
Yeah.
With BSV.
Yeah, totally. So that's a wonderful. So in other words, we're bringing this sort of no sign up idea, because people, you know, when you try to really make it so that the onboarding experience for an app is as good as possible, you really don't even want people to have to sign up, is what you're saying, because even that barrier is a barrier for people to use your app. So the more you can get rid of anything like that at all, the better. And so we have that intrinsic property in Bitcoin. Basically, again, I have to give the caveat, which is it assumes you've already been onboarded to Bitcoin SV. And right now there's a pretty big barrier to that. If you have been onboarded to Bitcoin SV, the barrier to onboarding to your app is radically lower.
Yeah.
But what do you think about that, though? Because this is what I call the onboarding problem. And the onboarding problem is, instead of being an onboarding problem for your app, it's like the onboarding problem for the ecosystem. Do you have any thoughts on that? Like, how do we onboard people to, first of all, do you agree with that's sort of like we've sort of put the problem in a different location? Like, for the people that have Bitcoin SV, it's much easier. But do you agree with that? And then what do you think about that? And how do we solve that problem?
I mean, the general onboarding to Bitcoin is definitely, you know, it requires, I mean, it's definitely important, but not as important as onboarding your user, the BSV users to your service. So here's my problem with people arguing that we need to onboard outside crypto people into the crypto, right? I don't think that's the right way to approach. I don't think internet scale that way. I don't think the adoption of internet happened through that sort of methodology. So one of the examples I can think of is, I know all BSV people hate Binance and CZ and all these casino-like speculative market, but there's a great lesson that we can learn from CZ from Binance. He was very smart about his business decision. So let me explain. If you're building a consumer application on BSV for any reason, you know, you think BSV is going to be successful, the metanet is going to be the new internet, whatever reason that you believe. If you're building a consumer application and you are trying to bring outside of crypto or outside of BSV people into your application, I think your approach is wrong. Even if it does what you intend to do, maybe you could bring some of the people outside of crypto or BSV to your app, but that's going to be very minimal. So the way that Binance launched its exchange when there are thousands of competitors already, right? So it's a highly saturated market, very competitive market. And once Binance launched, within 6 months, it became by far the biggest exchange ever. So that's when you see something that dramatic, that you would have to know how that was possible, regardless what you think about Binance and CZ, right? And it was very clear to me that the decision that CZ made was very smart. When everyone was thinking about crypto market, it was small, tiny, and everyone was trying to bring institutional money and outside of crypto money into crypto so that they can have a bigger pie. When everyone was thinking about doing that, they restricted themselves to be compliant with to be friendly with regulators, right? Well, obviously there's nothing wrong with that in long term, but from strictly business perspective, when this ICO scams and all these shitcoins demand was going crazy, when everyone was doing ICO, there has to be someone that's taking those demands and make a product, right?
Yeah.
So that's what everyone's thinking about. So Gemini doing advertisement in like Wall Street, all these people, all this outside effort was meaningless when crypto market was growing rapidly, the speculative market was growing rapidly, and CZ's idea, what I believe, is that no, crypto market is not small. I mean, it is small now, but you want to be as dominant as possible within that small ecosystem first. So when the ecosystem grows organically, then you have the proportionally the same dominance. So if crypto market is $1 billion market, then it goes to 100 billion market. If you have a 50% stake in 1 billion market, and then it grows to the 100 billion market, then you have $50 billion market. So your portion grows proportionally. So when crypto market exchanges was not popular way to do it, like Poloniex, Bittrex, instead of those exchanges, everyone was focusing on fiat exchanges, and Poloniex and Bittrex, they were afraid of regulatory sort of compliance, and they were delisting coins when all these ICO scams are happening. So Binance listed all these scam coins to fit the demand, to match the demand. So that's how Binance grew from basically nobody to the number one exchange. I'm not defending those speculative market. As we know, BSV is very hostile to that. But from business perspective, I think whenever you see a new ecosystem, new industry, it grows inside to outside instead of pouring outside the resources and users to the ecosystem. So I think that's how PayPal grew as well. PayPal was growing rapidly because they tell everybody that you can send money over the email, instead of telling non-email users, non-internet users to use PayPal, right? Mm-hmm. So I don't really worry about onboarding issues, because that's not how we focus. We are consumer applications. We only need to satisfy the users that are already on BSV, and the ecosystem will grow organically without us putting all our efforts to that, right?
Yeah.
So all we need to care about is to make user experience great within the BSV ecosystem.
Okay, so I love this line of thinking, because I'm one of the people you're talking about who I've been talking about this idea of onboarding to a new audience. So I love your ideas, because it contradicts what I'm saying, but you have very good reasons for saying this. So, I too watched CZ back in 2017 launch Binance, and it started from nothing, and it quickly became the largest exchange because he saw this particular market need. And like you were saying, it's not like it's about whether it's good or bad. I mean, it's okay if you think it's bad. It's also okay if you think it's good, whatever. The point is there was actually a real need in the market that CZ seems to have noticed that no one else did, to just have every single one of these things in an exchange that was fast and that worked. And so it exploded in popularity. So I guess that the lesson here is something like, so I could look at 3, let's say, markets to go after. And maybe you could just explain. So we're talking about, so it's so much harder to go out into the sort of outside world that's not even involved in crypto, that what you're saying is just forget about that right now. We're gonna rely on growth of the ecosystem. Eventually those people will come in just like they did with the internet. There's also the difference between the cryptocurrency market and the Bitcoin SV market. And it seems like you're saying, don't even worry about the cryptocurrency market. You're saying Bitcoin SV by itself is actually good enough. And if you build a killer application, you're actually in a way just helping solve the onboarding by creating value in the ecosystem. And everybody else is doing that too. And so we actually draw in people organically. And so you're saying, don't even worry about the rest of crypto. So you're saying yes here, but what do you think? I mean, so that's what you're saying, I guess, right?
Yeah. So, for example, Twitch, people complain about these people on Twitch are only BSV people, and they're only talking about BSV, that's perfectly fine. You know, you're not gonna bring non-crypto or non-BSV people into Twitch. You could, there will be, but your effort should not be that. You know, your effort should not convince non-BSV people to use Twitch or to use PeerGame, because the growth will be organic, out of your control. You'll be contributing, but you'll be out of your control.
Yeah. Okay. So then there's a different question there. I mean, from a business perspective, we all like, you and I are both entrepreneurs. So, PeerGame and Money Button have this, probably what we both want is to grow. And this is probably true for every business. And what it sounds like you're saying is that you basically want to rely on the growth of the ecosystem as a whole. And you're not explicitly focused on growing the ecosystem. You're growing your app within the ecosystem. So, I mean, is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. It's very interesting. It's very thought-provoking to me, just because it does flatly contradict my own ideas and how focused I am on onboarding. And when I say onboarding, I mean onboarding people basically to Bitcoin SV who aren't already involved in crypto. But really, it does make me second guess all this stuff. And I think that there is a lot of opportunity to grow without that. And it's so long as the ecosystem on the whole is working, which it seems to be right now, even though the price is down and people get sad about this stuff, it's really irrelevant. When I look at every other metric that is related to adoption, particularly the number of transactions, it's going up. I mean, like what else would we expect? I mean, that's what we want. The price really doesn't matter for almost any application at all. So long as the transaction volume is going up for whatever reason these people are using it, it's PeerGame or it's other apps or it's who knows what it is. That number is going up. So yeah, I mean, I think it's very interesting. So then what would you say from the perspective of, because my worry is like as an entrepreneur, is this fast enough? I mean, it's pretty fast when I look at the numbers, but what do you think? I mean, is it fast enough? You're saying we shouldn't try to grow outside and just rely on the intrinsic growth. So we just have to sort of survive long enough for that to be big enough to have a sort of a sustaining and growing business. I mean, what do you think about it? Do you understand what I'm saying? Like, is that enough growth to really sustain and grow the businesses?
Oh, that's a great question. I mean, the way I would look at it is that when you see a problem and you don't have a solution to it, then it's not a problem, right? So the speed of the growth, okay, it'd be great if we're able to accelerate the growth, but how are you going to do that? You can only do it by providing a better service. But what I'm saying is that the better service you're providing has to be targeted to the BSV people, not non-BSV people. So I'm sure there'll be a lot of sort of outside factors and even inside factors, like how to make onboarding easy, how to overpull, and all these tools will be useful to make better products that will accelerate the speed. But just saying that we should onboard people somehow, it's not really a solution for me. And it's a really bad way to operate your business, because you're always going to be constantly disappointed. You know what I mean? And then so I think it's a half full cup of water thing. Like you could look at how small BSV community or BSV ecosystem looks like, but you can at the same time you can also say, like as soon as you adopt Money Button, you get over 10,000 users from day one, and this is not possible in any traditional. Over 10,000 users who could pay from day one. So, like, you can look at it very, very positive way, and you can also be very pessimistic about your situation. But for us, it's just amazing how you could build a service very quickly, and then you have over 10,000 users who can pay from day one, and you can generate revenue from day one. It's unbelievable. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I agree with that. And so let me then ask you though. So one of the things we don't do with Money Button. So you say that like as though it's easy to get Money Button users. But we actually, with Money Button, do not actually have a way to show you. So we've had this long outstanding issue where we want to create some type of discovery page where you can find the apps that use Money Button. We actually don't have that right now. So how do you go about getting users? Because you had very interesting thoughts on this as well. So what is your strategy for finding those BSV enthusiasts who have a Money Button wallet with money in it already who can easily use your service?
Well, what I like about this sort of early industry, or very small industry, is that you have very focused group of people, and you have who to talk to over the internet, right? I mean, if you're just building a web service that is like, let's say, social media like Facebook, then who are you going to talk to? Like, you should start from Harvard students, right? You should start from Stanford. You should, that's the strategy of Zuckerberg. So it's basically a blessing for you to know that you have a very small group of people to target in the beginning, right? So for me, it's obvious. Like, everyone uses pretty much almost everyone uses Twitter in crypto, because that's where they get the fast information, and everyone has their own bags, and everyone has their own sort of circle, right? Echo chamber, so to speak. So you want to speak as loud as possible in the echo chamber. So what we did is just simply, I don't know, it's so simple, right? You just follow everyone that has BSV handle, either Money Button or Handcash or anything, or if anyone who talks about BSV or anyone who creates Twitch account, you just follow everyone, right? Yeah. And the fact that you're following these people, they will recognize that you are following. So, oh, what is this PeerGame thing? Oh, it's a new BSV app. Okay, I'll try. So the fact that you have a very focused small community in the beginning, it's such an advantage to start a business, because a lot of times you start a business, you don't even know who to talk to, right? So that was pretty much how we approach.
Okay, so I want to go into part of what you're saying, because you actually didn't use the word Twitter that I noticed in your thing there. But when you say follow people, I think you're talking about Twitter, correct?
Twitter, basically, yeah.
So I guess and I think this is probably true, but the enthusiasts do seem to be on Twitter. It's like the platform where you can go that's public, where you can find most of the enthusiasts. And what you're basically saying is, by following them, they get a notification that you followed them. So the PeerGame Twitter account follows them. They see that. Because they're an enthusiast, they're like, hey, what's this? PeerGame. And PeerGame's a great name, and the product is great too. So you have this really great, you've thought about, the product is somewhat intrinsically marketable. And so they notice what it is, and then they go check it out and use it. And so, that it seems like a pretty straightforward, a marketing plan that has worked extremely well.
Yeah. So one of the things I do for hobby is to collect every BSV project into one single chart. So PeerGame, we maintain sort of industry ecosystem chart on BSV, and I noticed so many projects that are not even known at all, and then they have a Twitter account, right? And then they're not following anyone, but they're just posting things. And then the best way for you to let people know that you exist is to follow them on Twitter, and it's unbelievably great tool to do that. Yeah. So I think every BSV app should use Twitter to follow basically everyone on BSV, to let them know. If they don't like it, then they won't use it, but at least they'll know that you exist.
I suspect some of these people, I think there's a lot of inexperienced entrepreneurs, and I don't want to make it sound like I am super experienced or something like this, but I think I probably am more experienced than many of the people involved, like where they start a project and then they just don't really know what to do. They just haven't already done it before. They don't have a lot of knowledge about startups or something like this. So they just don't do basic things like marketing at all, or they do it in a way that just isn't very effective. So I think what you're saying is a very good idea. I want to give a different sort of a different idea, just for the sake of the audience listening to this, because what I did and what we did with Money Button was quite different. At no point did I ever directly follow people specifically to get an audience. Our strategy always and everywhere has been basically to, first of all, build a product that people actually want and listen to what people are telling us and make sure that we're always making it better and making the best possible product we can. But the marketing strategy has always been create high quality original content. And so far, that's actually been very effective for us. So there's a reason why just about every BSV enthusiast is a user of MoneyButton. I didn't follow them on Twitter. All I've ever done is do things like write articles and create videos, particularly the videos. And that's kind of why I asked you to join me on this call. We get a sort of, more people will hear about PeerGame, more people will hear about MoneyButton. And it's sort of a win-win because we create this interesting conversation about, that's going to actually be valuable to some of these enthusiasts who are going to really value this information and learn something from this about how they can make their business better. But anyway, I just wanted to say that, like, for the entrepreneurs listening, here are 2 explicit strategies you can use to help you grow your business. One is literally just follow people on Twitter, and then have a good name and stuff like that, and have a link to your company when you follow them on Twitter, and engage with people on Twitter, because so many people on Twitter, they'll see this. And if you have an app that they're interested in, they'll click through and some of them will use it and stuff like this. And then the other thing is, I have found creating high quality original content. This is a bit harder, just because, it's like, the only way to do that is to basically sort of have the capacity to actually create that content. Because I've been involved in Bitcoin for so long. I know a lot about Bitcoin that a lot of people don't know. So I can just say stuff that they don't know. But a lot of people know something that other people don't know. So anyway, what do you think about that? I mean, what do you think about the idea of creating original content? Because that is effectively the marketing plan of MoneyButton, and it's gotten us this far.
I mean, yeah, it's great if you could do it, but a lot of times you don't have high quality content to speak about, so so it's not for everybody, I guess, right?
I agree. I agree. I think yours is a little bit more. Your idea would work for any good product with a sufficiently compelling sort of name and obviousness to what it is that they actually click through and look at it. So so long as they see they need to be interested enough in what it is to actually click through. So I think the name PeerGame is a very good name. I mean, if it was just some totally different thing, imagine it was just a person's name or something like this, or who knows what it would be. You could come up with just some name that no one's interested in. That seems like that matters, but your strategy is more likely to actually work for any product. I mean, basically, so long as I have a product, and then if people don't click through, it's a sign that something maybe they don't have a very good product. So.
I mean, we're at a stage where people just will click and actually be attentive to you just because you build things on BSV, right? It's over the internet, it doesn't really happen. It's that everything except that I care is a spam on the internet. But on BSV right now, because we're a very early stage, everything that anyone builds, it's basically a good thing for me as a user, because as an ecosystem, right? So I would say most of the users will be very attentive, very, very caring of what you do, even though they're not going to use it, but they're definitely going to visit you, probably share and retweet. So yeah, I mean, it's one of the things that you can only benefit from in the very early stage of the ecosystem, right?
What are the things? Was that a question, or I mean?
Just saying, very early stage, you can benefit from the formation of the ecosystem, because everyone is just trying to know what's happening, right?
I think, to me, I think you're underestimating how good of a product PeerGame is, though. Because the other thing is, you and I don't know what your background is and how experienced you are, but I think you made a very, very good product. I think you understand what the user wanted, and I think you made that. And I think that a lot of these apps, I'm not sure that actually they're really compelling enough to get as much usage. In fact, I'll just tell you, I mean, from the perspective of MoneyButton, I'm not going to share any numbers, and you can share numbers if you want to. But PeerGame is extremely popular, and it is more popular than most other apps. So even though a lot of these apps have existed for a while, they don't have anywhere near as much usage as PeerGame does. And it could be marketing, and maybe it is, like you're saying. Well, what do you think? I mean, do you think that that's marketing, or do you think that that's product?
No, it's not I don't think it's a marketing. Well, I mean, it's gambling. So basically, when we're not really a gambling company, we're a technology company, based out of St. Kitts. We had to look around the potential applications that we could build for BSV, and a lot of applications. Probably the most applications that you could build can only work in the assumption that BSV is already predominant money, right? So everyone uses BSV like cash. Everyone uses BSV instead of credit card and all kinds of stuff. Then your application will be the next Google or next Facebook, whatever, the huge services. But we're not there yet. No one uses BSV as a alternative to their cash. It's just internet money that people buy and sell and use it in the ecosystem, right? So there are many applications that could be amazing when BSV is money, but because we're not at that stage, we had to build an applications that could work and generate revenue for us to build the next products for us the next the journey. So the obvious choice for us was gaming, because the ability that you can make money off of it, of course you could lose money off of it, but the ability that you can actually earn by betting well, or when strategy, with the better strategy, you could make money. Then you don't really need BSV to be cash. You know what I mean? As long as it has value and you could double it, you could triple it, it's fine. So it's, I mean, the growth of internet is also about porn and gaming, right? So we wanted to replicate that growth in order to build other products, right? Yeah. So the growth strategy may be specific to PeerGame, but I'm sure there are other applications that don't really require BSV to be predominant money. Yeah.
So I mean, let me interpret what you're saying. I mean, basically, some of the applications people are building right now are very good ideas, but they will be successful businesses in the future when the market's bigger. Like some of them just require a bigger market. And so the entrepreneurs should be asking themselves the question, what works right now in the Bitcoin SV community today? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
I think that's, again, I think that the way that you say this, I think you understate how smart you are in what you did, because you did a bunch of things very, very well that are like exactly the right moves to make, which has led to the level of success that you're seeing right now with PeerGame. So I think the product is good, but I think you're right. Like, it sounds like you basically built a product that actually does have a market in Bitcoin SV right now, enough that you can actually start earning money right now, which distinguishes you from most of these other projects.
Yeah. So we had to generate revenue somehow at the early stage, because we're, like a lot of times Ethereum and all these crypto projects, when you look around, they're all individual developers. They're all open source individual developers, because you don't have to put skin in the game. You only put time into the game, right? But when you actually build a company, then you need to spend money on employees and recruiting. But how are you going to get the money? Okay, I could get funding. I could self-fund it, but as long as we're not generating revenue, you're potentially going to fail. So what areas can we generate revenue that could fund the other projects that we really, really wanted to build, that could be potentially very big when BSV becomes dominant ecosystem, right? It was an obvious choice for us.
Okay. Do you have any thoughts on, like, I mean, imagine from the perspective of another entrepreneur who's sort of interested in Bitcoin SV. I mean, it sounds like, I think that some entrepreneurs probably need to recognize something like they should be very explicit. Like, okay, the way I put this is, you need to build the right thing. This is like so important that building something, like if you put all this time and effort into building something and you build the wrong thing, you have a giant problem. It's like really important to build the right thing. And so they should be putting time and effort into making sure that whatever it is that they're building does really make business sense right now. I mean, again, what do you think? Is that a correct way to put it?
Yeah. I mean, for us, it was very clear. We had to build something for BSV people only to test our MVP. And we had to make sure that it could possibly generate revenue, as although it's not much.
Yeah.
And you had to have growth. So if you don't have a growth, I don't know. Like, okay, so we believe that BSV is going to be the new internet. It's going to be massive. But you can't have growth in your app with your BSV users. Then you can't expect to have growth when BSV becomes, dominant. When non-BSV people come on board it, and it becomes just massive ecosystem, right? So it was very clear to us to build a product that works and grow within BSV users, right? I think if you're building a consumer application, I'm not sure if you build like B2B corporate enterprise data storage kind of application, who knows? But if you're building an consumer applications, and then you're thinking about how to, you're not thinking about the dominance within the BSV ecosystem. For example, you're building a wallet and you don't really care about the dominancy within the BSV ecosystem, and all your corporate efforts goes into how to onboard other people to your app, then you lose. Like, it's so obvious to me. You're definitely going to lose out of competition, because there will be people who are focusing on BSV people and growing within BSV ecosystem. And when people come onboarded to BSV, and that's going to be the first choice they're going to use, right? So everyone's looking at BSV very tiny ecosystem that doesn't really matter. So all these big corporations may not jump in because of various reasons, right? I mean, who uses BSV? Why so tiny? It's like number 9 in the market cap. All that superficial, all these superficial reasons, they're not jumping into BSV, except very few very small startups that look at the growth of the Bitcoin ecosystem and the users, right?
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I mean, yeah.
Okay, so I have related to this. I mean, what do you think we can do with Money Button to better help PeerGame and or other applications? Like, what do you think? It sounds like, one of the things that's clearly in your mind very important is that by using Money Button, you already have, sort of, because so many Bitcoin SV enthusiasts are signed up for Money Button, so long as you can tell them about your app, they already have the ability to use your app. Is that, first of all, that sounds like the most important thing. Is that correct? And then secondly, what in your mind are important things that we can do with Money Button to, make it even better from your perspective?
Money Button was okay. So we talked about this before. The PeerGame idea started before the fork. BCH BSV fork. So we have these two different product on. So one in BCH and one in BSV.
Right.
And the BCH version doesn't really work. No one uses it. I have two theories about that. The first theory is that no one ever uses BCH in the first place. So they're all hodlers or either speculators. The second theory is that because they don't have a Money Button, they have something similar like Badger, but you have to download a plugin extension, but you have to click the button and then the extension shows up. So you have one more step to make a payment instead of just click or swipe, right? Yeah. So that very small, tiny bit of user experience creates massive difference in terms of usage. So Money Button, to me, it's completely a paradigm shift in terms of user experience, because non-custodial button that you could just click and make a payment out of your own pocket is just it's not even I don't know how to describe it. It's just unbelievable. It solves virtually every projects that almost all internet companies have.
Yes.
Right. So okay, we go to YouTube, we watch YouTube video for free, but if you want to watch YouTube movie, then you would have to pay. That Google will have to, Google is forced to make a sign up process because they need to get the payment. It's not that Google is an evil company, maybe probably is right now, evil company that wants your data so badly, so they put unnecessary sign up so that you could give your own data. Maybe that's true at this point, but in the beginning, Google was forced to have all these funnels and barriers because that was the only payment channel. I mean, imagine like YouTube started today, and then you could basically sell YouTube movies by just by swiping money button. Like, why would you need a sign up in the first place? You don't need to do any of this stuff. So it changes entire paradigm of the user experience. The money button does. So I'm not sure that answers your question.
Yeah, no, well, let me just say that, I mean, it's really interesting. So brief history of Money Button is we were going to make a decentralized social network starting in 2015. And that was called DAT. That mutated into what was called Yours. Yours became a sort of decentralized micropayments, but centralized server architecture social network. And what we learned from that is, like, we went through this giant multi-years long process of focusing the product until we eventually made Money Button. And we actually had the idea for Money Button originally, but it wasn't clear that that was the right idea. What it really is a way of solving the user experience problem of Bitcoin. It's just an embeddable Bitcoin wallet that removes like every barrier to using it, so that you just finally have this easy to use payment system that can be just plugged in anywhere. So it's everything you just said. And so one way to look at what we are doing is solving the user experience problem of Bitcoin. That's exactly what it is. It has good user experience because that's exactly what we're trying to do, is to give it a good user experience so that we solve that problem. But you have to solve the problem of making an app that people actually want to use. You know, we solve this, just make the wallet itself user friendly. And I'll just add to that, I don't want to say anything sort of, I can no longer talk about our roadmap publicly, but we're not done yet solving the user experience problem. There are further things we're going to do to make it continue to eliminate barrier after barrier after barrier to usage, so that it is user friendly. And so then, you know, okay, so that's the mission. And then I want to briefly just think about what you said a second ago about the difference between Bitcoin Cash and Bitcoin SV, because you said something very interesting. You have two versions of PeerGame. One is for Bitcoin Cash and one is for Bitcoin SV. And no one really uses the Bitcoin Cash one. And your theory is either the users there aren't any users, or the user experience of the tools are just slightly worse. And that actually makes all the difference. And that's why the Bitcoin SV version is actually growing much more quickly than the Bitcoin Cash version.
Yeah.
So is that correct? And then isn't that interesting? I mean, it's just fascinating.
Yeah. I mean, we could do this. We could see how users react, right? We could totally see how users react. Yeah. And I think that's probably the reason why people don't use it on BCH. The purely the user experience.
You know, there's a funny thing, and I don't think we'll do this because I don't really want to do anything that would hurt the user experience, but we could explicitly test that. Like, what if we added an extra click for some users, just for instance? You know, I don't know what it would look like exactly, but we literally deliberately test it. We do an A/B test somewhere and just see what happens. And I think you're probably right that if we were to do that, we would see that, you know, it would make the user experience so much worse that no one would use it. But I'm already so convinced that that's the case that I wouldn't even want to try it. Because all that would happen is we would lose some users. Right?
Yeah. Probably not a good idea. Yeah.
Okay. I think what we're going to do is continue to make it better. And then the theory will be, as we make it better, we should have more users. I think that's what we'll do instead. That's the way to test it. We don't do anything that makes it worse. We do things that make it better. And the number of users and amount of users should be going up. I think.
Yeah. Money Button solves different problems than ours, right?
Well, you mean than your business? I mean, where they're very different and compatible, sort of complementary businesses. You're solving your set of problems, we're solving our set of problems. And that's what we're doing. I mean, another lesson from entrepreneurship, again, for the entrepreneurs that are listening. I've studied Silicon Valley sort of philosophy, and based on what you're saying, it sounds like you must have at least read some of these books, or at least listened to some of these people, because you say very similar things I say. One of the sort of ideas that people in Silicon Valley talk about a lot is just the idea of focus. It's not like this is just exclusive to Silicon Valley, but in any case, focusing on something. And what Money Button is incredibly focused. So, I've learned this lesson over time, that you want to focus. And I think we found something with Money Button that's as focused as it could possibly be. It's just the button. That's all it is. And we don't make anything else, but we need to make the best button. So there's no way it gets more focused. But we do need to actually be the best, because we already have competitors, and people are now cloning us. That's why I can't talk about the roadmap publicly, but because I don't want them copying what we've already done. I can't have them copying what we're going to do. But so for the people that are listening to this, one thing you can do is there are tons of new applications you should create. So there are some takeaways from this conversation. Maybe let me just say what I think people can learn from this, and you tell me whether you agree with this. So one thing is, first of all, it's actually a good idea to focus on the Bitcoin SV community specifically. And that means coming up with something that can be a business now for Bitcoin SV enthusiasts. That's like takeaway number one. Takeaway number two is market your product. And the best way, it's very straightforward to do this, is to actually just create a Twitter account for your company and then follow every single Bitcoin SV enthusiast on Twitter. And they will click through and use your app. And there you get an audience of people that are enthusiasts that will use it. That's the number two thing. The number three thing that, of course, I think is a very good idea is to use Money Button, because we already have these users. So when you get the Bitcoin SV enthusiasts, well, they probably already have a Money Button wallet with money in it that they can swipe, in your app. So you can really create this high quality user experience for them. And then I would say, as a final thing, focus. Just like we're very focused with Money Button. With your thing, you're solving, and I don't know what your perspective is on exactly what problem you're solving. You said earlier you're not a gambling company or a technology company, but certainly whatever the product that you created is extremely focused and people use. So I would say make a focused app that people actually enjoy. So there's 4 takeaways. What do you think about all that stuff?
Yeah. I mean, spot on. I mean, those 4 are the founding principles that we abide by. Nothing to add. I mean, great. Like, how can you possibly build a BSV application and not add Money Button? Like that's just an insane thing to think about. And there are applications like that, and I see those applications.
Well, they exist. I joke to you that, can you be our spokesperson? Because you say this with such conviction. I think you understand, though, again, like I think you're understating how smart you are and what you've done. Because a lot of these people, and I don't mean this in an offensive way, but a lot of the people involved in Bitcoin SV are extremely amateur entrepreneurs. They have this idea. And again, I'm not claiming to be some expert or something. I'm just saying, I can see that they're kind of like me before I had some experience. They don't fully understand what to do. And so they make these basic mistakes. They're not really quite thinking about things correctly. They're not really thinking, I really need a business right away. And if I can do that, it's better. So I need to build this thing instead of this thing, because this is a business and this thing might be cool, but it's not a business until 5 years from now. And so if I just do this thing right now. So I think you're sort of, you have some wisdom. And again, I don't know what your background is, and I don't know if I'm going to share this, but you're understating how smart your moves have been. And if other people do this, it will work. Like, they could be as successful as PeerGame is if they listen to what we're saying and they do these things. It'll probably work, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it almost makes me feel like we should just do that instead of, I mean, if we're going to build other applications, then we'll just build the better application. So there's a really weird sort of sense that people have, that they view each other as a competitor, not a compatible sort of partner.
Yeah.
I guess it's kind of a good thing, because the reason why they look at you or look at others as competitors because they think the market is going to be giant and enormous. So you have this faith in the massive growth. So maybe you're competing too early, but I don't know. I mean, it's not even a competition now. You think about it. It's just a dumb thing to do.
Yeah, let me make some comments on this because I have some very I don't want to say everything publicly, but I'll say that I think of there as being there's sort of smart capitalism and then there's like stupid capitalism. So
Yeah.
they're putting it. And smart capitalism is you don't want to go out there creating enemies because there's a lot of value in what other people are doing in the space. And there's so much opportunity right now to create something novel where you can be completely complementary to and to work with these other businesses. You will gain better that way than going out there and going in head-to-head competition with another tiny startup company. So people that replicate stuff, like if you take another tiny company and just replicate what they're doing and try to steal their users, you're not actually really creating value. You're actually just making it harder for yourself because now you've got a competitor too. I mean, like, why do you want to directly compete? I mean, you can make something completely new and have no competitors. So the idea of explicitly going out there in direct head-to-head competition with another company just seems like a bad strategic decision. It's bad for your own company. And anyway, so that's kind of like one way of looking at it. And there's a lot more I could say about this. I'll say one other comment. I've been very publicly angry with Twitter. So I'll distinguish between my fury with Twitter because I think that it empowers people to mislead people. But then the reality is it is useful from a marketing perspective. So everything you said is correct. But I still don't like it because I don't like the fact that I've been misled on Twitter. And I don't like the fact that people are continuing to be misled on Twitter. So those things can be true simultaneously. But there's a lot of people being very vocal on Twitter that are just sort of creating sort of needless aggression and needless problems that I see. And that's why I got off Twitter because like people still send me links and stuff to Twitter, but I see a lot of like pointless arguments that are just like literally just wasting people's time and energy, and it's not productive whatsoever. But I want to give a final concluding sort of thought on this, which is that I think this stuff is inevitable. Like what's going on is in the history of Bitcoin, I can see people running every experiment contrary to the long-term success of Bitcoin. So all these altcoins, for example, it's like, I think the long-term solution is probably the fact that Bitcoin is going to be the foundation of a new world economy. It will be the money of the world, and it will actually form not just money, but actually information infrastructure. And so everything we do in the future, probably, there's no guarantee about this, but I think that the incentives are set up to create this. It can do this, and I think it's moving in that direction. It'll be the foundation of the world economy. There's no guarantee this will happen. There are lots of ways this could go wrong. But that sort of contradicts the idea of the existence of altcoins. So people are like, well, I don't believe that. So I'm going to go make my own coin that's better. And they think they've made a better coin, but they haven't really because they never understood Bitcoin to begin with. And I see the same thing happening within the Bitcoin SV community right now. People are running every experiment contrary to the ultimate success of what's going to happen. So they run these, so things like, I'm very committed to making Money Button successful. So when people directly compete with Money Button, well, our entire focus is on making the best Money Button. It would be very hard to actually make a better Money Button because, unless you're completely focused on that, we're probably going to continue to be better than the competitors in different ways. So what they're doing is they're like running an experiment, and this is actually a good thing, and this is why I expect this. It's actually good to attack this theory. So I have two theories, the success of Bitcoin and the success of Money Button, but I could be wrong. And so it's actually good, and it's to be expected that people will attack these ideas. And we'll see what happens, but that's what I see happen. So I think this aggression, this needless arguments on Twitter, and this sort of stupid capitalism of like literally creating a competitor by just deciding to clone somebody's product and do the exact same thing as somebody else. Like you're just, there's no reason to create so much work for yourself. But anyway, I think it's inevitable, and I expect this to continue. So that was a long rant there, but what do you think about those?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's so true. I look at, you know how this human demographic is sort of like a pyramid type. So the bigger audience are the sort of lowest class who don't really understand things, and you need ways to make them understand. So I don't want to sound like sort of hierarchy of intelligence, but more intelligent, more insightful you are, pretty much less audience who will understand your insight and your intelligence. So so basically I mean, the complaints and sort of like competitive, this sort of dumb capitalistic attack against Money Button. I also had the same thing because I didn't understand Money Button, right? Like when I clicked Money Button, I expected a QR code instead of sign up pop up, and I thought it was a terrible idea, right? But once you start understanding the intent of Money Button and actually use it, then you understand why that's not the first choice that you want to go for. And I think a lot of people that you have to expect that people won't understand you ever. They will never understand you. We get so many attacks per game as well. But the people who will understand will be smaller, less than the mass public, but they'll get it. And those are the people that actually will create before than anyone else. So the success of Money Button is that I think you're very spot on creating a high quality content, because I'm not sure how many views you have, but you're the specific audience who would enjoy your talk will be the people who would actually understand your talk, and it's likely that those people will create more value than sort of massive mass public who are on Twitter just arguing about, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point. You're right. So what I'm saying about creating content is actually complementary to your idea of who to market to, because the content I create appeals to a Bitcoin SV audience. So even though, I mean, like I didn't really, the reason why I do that is just because I can. Okay, so like that wasn't like the plan. It's more like I just can do that. I can create content about Bitcoin SV. And so that did build a Bitcoin SV specific audience, and I'm still doing that. And that's what this conversation is. You and I are both doing that right now. But it's very complementary. So we actually are doing the same thing from a sort of a different perspective of building companies that are within the Bitcoin SV ecosystem.
The Money Button's audience is different from PeerGame's audience, definitely. And it's really important to know your audience. And this is what I found out over the years. I used to run a conference. Called Economy. And then I've never ran a conference before, so I didn't know how to run a conference. And I think the great lesson here is that going into a situation without any knowledge is actually really, really good thing. So what I figured out is that after sort of industrialization of process, meaning that, like when, the whole concept of conference, when it started out, I'm sure it was like, you know what, he's an interesting guy who knows a lot of stuff. Let's bring him here and talk about interesting stuff, right? That I'm sure that was the intent of the inception of conference. But after sort of industrialization process, then all this PR company, all this conference organization company pops up, and they tell you, okay, you need sponsorship, you need all these outside elements that are not really core to the value of conference, right? So I realized that all these conference companies are doing things because they have been doing this for a long time, and their predecessors have been doing things for a long time. And I figured we were able to bootstrap the conference very well, and very high quality conference, because we only focused on the idea that let's bring very interesting people together so that they can talk about interesting stuff. That's why we invited Craig Wright 2 years ago, when everybody just hated him. And that brought way better product, way better outcome. And everyone was thinking about their audience, the service audience, the conference audience is their audience, right? It's okay. Users of the conference are the audience in a traditional sense of conference. But for us, the speakers are the users. So you only have to worry about the speakers, because that's the audience that you want to focus on. So you bring better speakers, then because of the good speakers, you have massive audience. Because of the massive audience, you have sponsors. So that was natural progress that entire conference industry has forgotten about. And that's why that's what I learned about. You need to know like who your audience is so clearly that everything that comes after is just byproduct. Your revenue and your new users or new ideas are just byproduct of just focusing on one very clear audience class. I don't know. I'm just babbling, but I think what Money Button is doing is giving a high quality information to people that attract those who actually understand and trying to build stuff. It's just really, really very focused and very good idea.
Yeah.
Of marketing.
Well, thank you. That's what we're trying to do. And the theory there is that we win over people's, it's just actually valuable to people. So they should be working with us, not against us. Like, we're trying to help people. We're by building our own company. And I would see this with PeerGame being the same way. Where like people have every reason to want the success of both PeerGame and Money Button. So, by doing it this way, that's the idea, that we win friends and not enemies, hopefully, for the most part. So,
yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So Jeff, let's see here. Are there any other final questions here? This has been extremely interesting. I mean, I asked you my top questions. I think, that what we've just done in this talk is actually, I think, pretty original. Like the idea, like there's a lot of technical information out there, but actually we talked about business, which I actually haven't seen very much of. And we need more of this stuff. Do you have any other thoughts on that? Like, I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure what to do moving forward, but there should be more information about business to help people turn their projects that they create into something real that they're earning money, or just to flip it on its head and think, well, how do I earn money? And then make sure you build the right project that actually facilitates that. Any thoughts on that? I mean, what should next steps be, from our perspective? Like, any way we can help further with people that are trying to create a business?
I don't know. I think the devil is in the detail. So generally speaking, I'm very satisfied of what's happening right now. So, what I've experienced is that Twitch users are PeerGame users. I mean, obviously, all money button users. I mean, all PeerGame users are money button users. But what you would experience if you launch a product, well, then you'll see how City and Chain users are PeerGame users, and Twitch users are PeerGame users, right? PeerGame users are Twitch users. So because of this sort of like one goal in one ecosystem type of mentality, I don't know. I'm very optimistic about how it's going to turn out over, maybe 5 years, 10 years. I think if we're going to talk about what's next and how to accelerate things, and it's going to be very detailed, like strategy per company, I'm not sure how, like, from like a macro perspective, I'm not sure what else you could do. We're just doing so much better than anything else.
I'll tell you what I think you should do. I think you should keep doing exactly what you're doing, because what you're doing right now is, so long as, and this is an example where we're getting a bit of this information out there, but you are a role model, actually, because you're doing such a very precise job of building your app with the way that you've built the right product, marketed it correctly, and are succeeding and growing. People can simply notice your success and learn from that. That's what I would say to you is like, you don't have to do anything specific other than just keep succeeding. And then we can just make sure that people notice this and they can learn from your lessons, because you've really just done a better job of this than almost anyone else, I think. I mean, most other companies in the space haven't done as targeted and focused a job as you have at really going from nothing, or at least from the perspective of within. I know you had this idea, and I don't know the whole history and everything like this, but within the Bitcoin SV world, it grew very quickly. And so you're just nailing it. So anyway, that's what I would say to you is you're a role model. And so keep doing a good job and continue being a role model, and other people will learn from you.
Thanks. Yeah. Well, we're not, I don't know. I think you're speaking very nice of us, but I think the success of PeerGame literally depends on the onboarding of Money Button at this stage. I mean, obviously, Money Button is not going to be the only payment method they will support, but it's just massively dependent on Money Button's onboarding. So, you know, the reason why I'm very optimistic about this is that I look at things in two different ways, because I get wrong all the time. I become wrong so many things all the time. So what the way I figured out how to be not wrong is to evaluate two things. Is first is the existence. Do people actually use it? Regardless of what I think is reasonable to use, or you know, whether it's logical or not, to me, it doesn't really matter. Do people actually use it? And the second thing is it actually that the users are growing? So the usage and growth are the biggest metric for me to evaluate what's right or what's wrong. Because, you know, like a Twitter investor said, oh, I invested in Twitter, but Twitter is the worst idea that I could ever, you know, thought of. But my daughter is using Twitter all the time, so I invested it, you know. That sort of mentality where you differentiate, you separate your reasoning from what's happening in the operation of reality. And so when the confidence we have is actually not in our growth. I mean, obviously we're growing, and we're growing probably like, I don't know, like 10% a day, right? In terms of volume. But the confidence we get is from the ecosystem, but specifically Money Button, because the last time, so I joined Money Button, I was like 2000 something, and I thought I was pretty late joining 2000, because I was pretty stubborn not joining Money Button, not signing up, because I didn't like the absence of QR and stuff like that, right? But now we see the handle, Money Button handle, that is like, I don't know, 11,000. It's over 10,000 for sure. And that you see this growth and you see this usage. People use it for something, for a strange reason. What, regardless of you think Money Button is reasonable or BSV is reasonable, people are using it, it's growing. That makes us to prepare for the further steps, right? That makes us to be very optimistic about what we're gonna do in the future. So it's all interconnected, it's all compatible, and we don't really have to think about how small the market is and how, you know, how we can make money off of it. Yeah, so.
Okay, well, yeah, I mean, you know, I wasn't sure it was a good idea to expose that user number publicly in the way that we did, but your argument is kind of interesting because it does allow people to see our growth.
Oh, yeah.
That's good. It's like, oh, well, you're right. I mean, there are a lot of users here that anyone can see just by looking at that number. What is the latest user sign up number? How many users we have, and therefore the size of your market, you know, for your app. So.
Yeah, so I'll give you an example. I told you already that CAC, the customer acquisition cost of game company, is $150. And those are 2% of the entire sign up or visitors, right? I will probably sign up. From sign up, they have 2% people to pay more than $150 to recover their customer acquisition cost, which is $150. So your success of your product or growth of your product depends on how many Money Button users, how many users Money Button has, and how much money the Money Button users put into Money Button, and the fact that you eliminate all the funnel and you immediately generate. So okay, for example, we have exactly the same similar concept as PeerGame in other gaming companies using Ethereum and any other stuff, right? You look at their activities. All these bets are penny bets, right? All those bets are 2 cents, 1 cent, and it's not even like sort of betting. It's more like social betting, but you're betting like it's too little, and you the only satisfaction you get is the feeling of winning the bet, right? So, and then our average bet is like, I don't know, it's like $10-$20, and a lot of times people bet $150. It's one BSV and so on. So this is just enormous opportunity that anyone can benefit from. You have not only you have 10,000 users from the day one, but you have 10,000 users who could bet not just penny, but more than a few dollars.
Yeah.
Right. It's just a beautiful thing. It never happened in any time in history of the internet. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So let me just, so I asked you earlier sort of like, is there anything we can do with MoneyButton? I mean, what I'm hearing from you is that the single most important thing we can do is get more users that have more money, because all of those people are just one swipe away from using PeerGame. So that would be valuable to you. Like you have, we're again, it's like another case where we're clearly so complementary. Your success is our success and vice versa. We both want each other to succeed. And I would say to the entrepreneurs listening to this, like, what they can do is, anybody that creates any new app, and I've given lists of this, I can give other, I mean, I've got tons of ideas. I've got about 1,000 times more ideas than I can ever build, but you don't have to listen to me. Just build your own app and you have to figure that out for yourself. But if you use MoneyButton in your app, for the entrepreneurs listening to this, you're actually, it's like win-win times 3, right? It's like, I mean, the more apps in this sort of ecosystem, if they deposit money for Twitch, they've got money that they can also use in PeerGame. And that times 1 million, because the more apps there are, it just grows the entire ecosystem. So just, the opportunity is very large, and it goes the other way around, because users that deposit money specifically to use PeerGame also have money available for all of these other apps too. So,
yeah. So basically what I'm trying to say is, obviously you could have 10,000 different strategies that you could do to make your product better and to have onboarding process easier and whatnot. But what I'm essentially trying to say, because we're not going to discuss very little details of how the strategy would work, what I'm trying to say is that you don't really have to worry about any of this stuff, because, like, for example, we get requests from users how to use MoneyButton. We get like BCH users how to use MoneyButton, and they're not aware of MoneyButton at all. Like, they just hate BSV, but they didn't know about MoneyButton. But they're trying to use our service, so they want to use MoneyButton. They send email how to use MoneyButton, and some BTC guys on Twitter, he's talks about how to use PeerGame, but for us, in order to use PeerGame, you need to have a MoneyButton. So why don't you sign up a MoneyButton? And he said, I did it. I don't have money, and then I'll send you some money to play PeerGame. So this adoption of MoneyButton drives the adoption of PeerGame or any other services. But at the same time, we onboard users to MoneyButton to onboard our games. So this is so natural, and a lot of revenues that we will generate will go into that process. Not only onboarding PeerGame, because there's no pretty much onboarding PeerGame. You need to onboard users to BSV ecosystem, so you would actually spend money for the general cost, some macro benefits to get the benefit back to your app. So it's so natural, and it's happening, and it's growing rapidly. We get so many requests, just how to use PeerGame, right? And we direct to the MoneyButton. We direct to, we say you download any wallet, or MoneyButton is the best to use PeerGame. So because we don't have time and all this stuff to discuss details of the strategy, I think what entrepreneurs in BSV can do is simply have faith in this organic virtual cycle of adoption. Like, once you build it, and once users are actually using your product, then you'll notice very quickly that this virtual cycle exists, and how adoption and expansion happens in your own eyes. It's just unbelievable thing to observe.
I think that's a very interesting thing. I'm interested in your use of the word faith there. I actually created a video. I don't want to go into details right now, but the video is called Jesus, Trade, and Entropy. And I actually said exactly what you just said in different words, which was the idea of you have faith in the economy. It's the idea that the other people are going to do stuff that's actually in your interest, so long as you're doing it correctly. And it's exactly what you just said. I mean, the virtuous cycle of, like, you build a product that solves a problem that people actually want to use. And then you don't have to worry about every other problem, because then people sort of get onboarded. And because these other apps are solving these other problems, Now part of your problem is now solved too. And by solving your problem, you're also solving some of their problem too. So it's
Yeah.
like that's the virtuous cycle that we're all, without even really consciously trying to help one another, just solve a problem. It does help everybody else too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, well, Jeff, this has been really, really cool. I'd love to continue this somehow. I don't know what this will be. Maybe we can just talk on Telegram or something like this and figure this out. But I would love to continue in some respect, just because the content in this video, I know people are going to like this because it's business information that's not, it hasn't really been talked about in the Bitcoin SV world that I'm sure is going to be useful to some of these people. So maybe we can just keep talking on Telegram and figure out, I don't know, some type of next step. Either we do another video or who knows what we do. But this has been really, really cool. I really appreciate your time. Thanks for talking. And I'm pretty sure people will find this useful, so I hope they do. Any concluding thoughts?
Yeah. No, I mean, thank you for talking to me. Yeah, I mean, the anything that we learn, anything you learn, or anything anybody learns, has to be shared, because it's a very unique moment where there's a real thing about, there's a real mutual benefit. Like, I don't really believe in like mutual, when people talk about mutual benefit, it's just like, but it's a really mutual benefit in practice, in reality. Like, so yeah. So I think we should definitely have more business talk, adoption talk,